What is it about empires that shapes the world centuries after their fall? From the ancient sands of Egypt to the endless steppes of Mongolia, empires rose like mighty titans, only to crumble into the dust of history. But their legacies, their influence, their whispers still echo today. A Roman engineer once whispered a secret to time: "We build not for today, but for eternity." But what if I told you some of the most powerful empires in history never truly vanished? Their bones lie buried beneath skyscrapers. Their dreams live in your laws. Their shadows are printed in your passport, your language, your gods. Empires don't die, they reincarnate. Have you ever wondered why a man in a suit still stands like a Roman senator? Why maps today look eerily like imperial blueprints from 2,000 years ago? Or how an empire that fell millennia ago still shapes the borders we kill over? This is not a list. This is a revelation of how the world you think is modern was sculpted in blood, ambition, and fire by the most influential empires in history, and how their echoes still rule you. This is not the story of the past. This is the story of the present, told by ghosts of empires. Welcome to the shadows of empires, the past that shapes our future. This is the most influential empires in history. But what made these empires so powerful? How did they mold the very foundations of our civilization? And can we still feel their presence today in the world we live in? The end of an empire, legacy through the ashes. History doesn't mark the end of an empire with fire, but with silence, not with battles, but with forgetting. Babylon welcomed its conqueror. Rome watched its own identity dissolve. Tenochtitlan was erased stone by stone. But even in their ashes, these civilizations whisper truths. They whisper of ideas too powerful to bury, of systems, legal, architectural, spiritual, that survived their creators. When Babylon fell to Cyrus the Great in 539 BCE, there was no resistance, no blood-soaked finale, just priests opening the gates and an empire being folded intact into another. Rome, it didn't collapse in 476 AD. Its Senate still met. Its roads still stretched across Europe. But the soul of the empire had already faded. And for the Aztecs, conquest didn't just bring swords, it brought silence. Temples razed, gods renamed, languages drowned beneath new prayers. For those who lived through it, the end was not heroic. It was slow. Erosion, not explosion. The deepest scars weren't carved by war, but by the slow unraveling of identity. When your son stops speaking your language, when your gods are locked behind another's altars. But empires are never truly lost. Babylon's laws echo in every courtroom. Rome's roads still guide modern cities. The Aztecs' floating gardens now feed 20 million in Mexico City. Empires don't vanish, they transform. Their bones become scaffolds. Their echoes become doctrine. Perhaps that's the cruel genius of history, to live long enough to see your ruins become someone else's foundation. But from those foundations came something greater. From the dust of Babylon rose Persepolis. From the shell of Rome emerged Byzantium. From the haunted jungles of Tenochtitlan, the seeds of a new civilization were sown. Because history never ends with ruin, it begins with what we build next. The rise of the great empires. From the ruins, a new dawn long before Rome dreamed of dominion. Before Athens raised its columns, there was Persia, forged not through fire alone, but through vision. In the 6th century BCE, the ancient Near East was a mosaic of fractured kingdoms. Babylon ruled in grandeur. Lydia thrived in opulence. But beyond the Zagros Mountains, a new force stirred. Not yet an empire, not yet a legend. But soon, Cyrus II of Anshan was no ordinary conqueror. Where others enslaved, he liberated. Where others burned temples, he restored them. His edict to the Babylonians would become the first known charter of human rights. To many, he was a liberator. To others, a new kind of ruler. But even tolerance has limits. To hold a continent together, Cyrus needed more than ideals. The royal road stretched over 1,600 miles, a marvel of ancient engineering. Couriers galloped from Susa to Sardis in days, binding cultures, cities, and courts together. But speed alone could not govern. Enter the satraps, regional governors granted autonomy and absolute accountability. A delicate balance, one that would be tested. To the east, Persia was a world of many gods and many peoples, protected by tolerance. But to the fiercely independent Greeks, it was submission wrapped in silk. As Darius I extended the empire westward, he encountered something new, a defiant idea. Freedom over unity, city over empire. A conflict was inevitable, but no one could have foreseen how far it would echo. 2 centuries after Cyrus's first triumphs, the empire met its match in another young visionary, Alexander of Macedon. But conquest is an erasure. Persian law, architecture, and governance did not vanish. They were absorbed and repurposed. In defeat, Persia transformed the very power that conquered it. As Persia's light dimmed in the west, a new fire ignited in the east. Where one empire wielded tolerance, another forged unity through iron and standardization. Across the Yellow River Basin, a brutal dreamer named Qin Shi Huang prepared to rewrite the very fabric of civilization, and in doing so, would begin a legacy that would last over 2 millennia. The power of influence, ideas, innovations, and ideals empires rise with banners. They fall with rebellion, but some never truly disappear. Instead, they linger in the language we speak, the systems we trust, the roads we walk. This is not the story of conquest. This is the story of influence, the quiet power that shapes the world long after the empire fades. Rome may have fallen to flame, but its laws outlived the fire. 12 tables, habeas corpus, the Republic. These weren't just policies, they were blueprints. As European kingdoms collapsed and rose, they didn't build from scratch. They borrowed from Rome. Even now, we measure justice in Latin. But as Rome exported civility, it imported slaves. Ideas like roads can carry more than just ideals. They came like a storm, unified by one man, Genghis Khan. But behind the arrows came maps, charts, trade agreements, postal systems. Under the Pax Mongolica, knowledge galloped faster than ever before. A Buddhist monk could walk from Korea to Baghdad. A Venetian merchant, Marco Polo, could reach the Mongol court and return with visions of another world. But what price was paid for this openness? How many cities burned to clear the path for peace? While Europe struggled through shadows, Baghdad shimmered in brilliance. Under the Abbasids, thinkers from across the Islamic world gathered. Jews, Christians, Zoroastrians, Muslims, all drawn to the promise of knowledge. They translated Aristotle, dissected stars, invented algebra. Centuries later, these texts would ignite the European Renaissance. But this flame too would flicker. Mongols would sack Baghdad in 1258, burning books that held the cosmos itself. The sun never set on the British Empire. Its reach spanned continents, but its grip was rarely gentle. Yet from the machinery of rule came something deeper, a shared legal framework, a global language, the idea that power must answer to the people. The very tools once used to dominate would be repurposed to demand freedom. But if language liberates, what happens when it silences the native tongue? Influence is not a monument. It's not a statue in stone. It's sediment layered into who we are. Roman law, Mongol trade, Abbasid reason, British structure, none were perfect. Each scarred the world even as they enlightened it. But when we speak, write, reason, or resist, we are haunted by empires we never lived under. Because no idea travels freely. Roads were carved with blood. Libraries rose as cities fell. Justice was often built on bones. The next chapter isn't about what empires gave, it's about what they took. Join us at the heart of empire, where glory begins and where the price is always paid. The heart of empire. Conquest and its costs. Empires rise with banners high, but behind every triumph lies a trail of ash. This is not the story etched into marble. This is the story scraped into the bones of the conquered. Carthage did not fall in a single moment. It wept in fire. In 146 BCE, Roman legions sacked the city, not merely to conquer, but to erase. Survivors were dragged into slavery, their gods silenced, their memory almost obliterated. But in Rome's triumph, something darker took root, an empire learning to rule not just by law, but by fear. And in the East, a new power would test fear itself as a weapon. When the Mongols rode, they carried no flags of diplomacy. They offered a choice: surrender and survive, or resist and vanish. In 1258, Baghdad, once the jewel of the Islamic world, was reduced to a morgue. The house of wisdom drowned in ink and blood. Civilization held its breath. But the Mongols were not madmen. They mapped the stars, ensured trade flowed, and built something from the bones they broke. Yet conquest wears no fixed face. Sometimes it wears a mask. The Aztecs ruled with obsidian and tribute. The sun demanded hearts, and so they gave. But when the Spanish came in 1519, they brought more than steel and gunpowder. They brought disease, doctrine, greed dressed as godliness. Tenochtitlan, once a lake-born wonder, fell stone by stone. It was not just conquest, it was apocalypse. Yet, even conquerors are changed by what they destroy. Empires build, empires burn, but conquest never ends at the sword. It continues in the whispers of the defeated, in the ruins where children now play, in the languages and customs reshaped by collision. Conquest is never just bloodshed, it's identity, shattered, reforged, forgotten. But even the mightiest flame flickers. What happens when power becomes weight? When rebellion brews in silence and borders strain with unrest? In the next chapter, we do not witness the triumph of empire, but its unraveling. This is the long death. This is the dying flame. Empires end, the dying flame. The collapse and legacy. Empires die quietly, not in the blaze of final glory, but in whispers, in empty marketplaces, in crumbling aqueducts, in forgotten treaties no one honors anymore. Rome didn't fall in a day. It fractured from within. Tax burdens crushed the poor. Armies became mercenaries. Loyalty frayed. Culture decayed. And when the barbarians came, they simply pushed over a dying giant. But the ghost of Rome refused to fade. Its laws echo in courtrooms, its architecture in capitals, its identity in empires that would come long after. Rome fell, but did its idea ever die? The Mongol Empire burned across the world with terrifying speed, but fire that burns too hot rarely lasts long. After Genghis Khan, his sons tore it apart with ambition and betrayal. Trade routes closed, borders hardened. The Silk Road fell silent, yet the connections they forged would become the veins of global trade centuries later. From their fall came a new world economy, The British Empire unraveled with the burden of its own contradictions. Liberty at home, oppression abroad, trade with one hand, conquest with the other. World wars drained its treasury, its colonies found their voice, and by the 20th century, the sun had truly begun to set. But the legacy of English law, language, and institutions lingered, often as scaffolding for the nations rising from its remains. Did the empire truly end, or did it simply mutate? When empires fall, the world remembers emperors and battles. But the real legacy lives in the people who stay behind and rebuild. They reclaim identity, they inherit pain, and they reshape memory, sometimes in monuments, other times in silence. From the ashes of conquest and collapse rise the myths we live by, the stories that shape borders, the values that structure justice, the symbols we carry, unknowing, etched deep into our everyday. So what becomes of an empire when it dies? It echoes through time, through institutions, through every blueprint we call civilization. In our conclusion, we follow those echoes to today. From policy to philosophy, from city streets to cyberspace, the age of empire may be over, but its shadow still shapes the future. Echoes of empire, the future. They shaped empires rise with ambition and fall with time. Yet long after their banners fade and their monuments crack beneath the weight of centuries, their shadows still stretch across our world, from our systems of governance to the languages we speak, the borders we inherit, the ideas we hold sacred. Each bears the fingerprints of those who came before. Roads built by Rome still guide our journeys. Numbers refined in Baghdad still calculate our futures. And from the ashes of conquest, fragments of culture continue to shape what we call civilization. But here lies the paradox. While these legacies enrich us, they also remind us of the cost, the violence, the erasure, the lives caught beneath the weight of greatness. Remember the cries that echoed through Baghdad's burning libraries, the silence left in the temples of the Aztecs, or the Roman roads paved over Celtic lands. Whose stories did we miss? So we ask, when today's world is one day dust, what echoes will we leave behind? Will the empires of our time be remembered for the bridges they built, or the bones they stood upon? History doesn't end, it reverberates, and now it echoes through you. Which empire's legacy surprised you most in this series, and why? Or go back to the Mongol Empire segment. Did their brutality erase more than we realize? Or did their network actually shape the world we know? Drop your thoughts in the comments. You are now part of the story. If the ruins of empires still shape our world, then understanding them isn't history, it's survival. Tap into the echoes. Subscribe and keep exploring the past that built your present. Drop your thoughts in the comments. We're listening. Subscribe to uncover the untold legacies of history's rise and fall.